I'm the type of person, if you ask me a question and I don't know the answer, I'm gonna tell you that I don't know. But I bet you what, I know how to find the answer, and I will find the answer.
Alright, even of course, it is of course Irish for a very warm welcome, my friends, to Shamrocks and Shanks, and another episode where we get to learn from some of the best professionals in the golf world. Now, my guest on today's episode is Ewen from UpGame, one of the leading statistics apps in golf. If you're not familiar with UpGame, it's a really powerful tool designed to give golfers a clear picture of how they actually play and perform on the golf course. The mission of this podcast has always been to help you, the club golfer, improve, and not all of us really have the hours and hours it might take to hit balls on the range in search of that technical perfect golf swing. So I think understanding your current tendencies, so with the swing you have, by measuring your performance accurately, is perhaps an easier way to improve and may actually in the long run take less time. In our conversation, Ewen explains how UpGame works, and in many ways it helps improve performance, from highlighting areas that you maybe thought you were performing well and that actually need that time and focus on the range, or detailing performance in any category like length of putt performance, so perhaps I'm better from 5 to 10 feet than I am from 15 to 20, to planning out future round strategies based on previous round shot patterns. Now, I've been using UpGame myself in my own game and indeed with my players for quite some time, and it's by far the best stats app that I've come across, and believe me, I've tried a few. So with all that said, let's dive in. Here's Ewen from UpGame. Ewen, very warm welcome to Shamrocks and Shanks. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. You work for one of the leading statistics apps out there called UpGame, so you've kindly taken a couple of minutes out of your schedule today to talk to us about the app, what it's great for, how we use it, and all the information around it. So thank you very much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Thanks so much for having me on here. Really excited to be part of the show.
Fantastic. Now, I've used UpGame for quite some time now for my students, and even a little bit for my own game, I've got to admit, and it's helped me tremendously. So we wanted to get you on the show basically to explain to customers a little bit of the background of the app, what's it about, what it does, and the benefits of them using it long term. Because one of those challenges with using statistic apps is the input of information. So we want to make sure that customers know, hey, that time you're spending to input, you're getting so much more back out of it. So it's well worth your investment. So for listeners maybe who aren't familiar, what is UpGame and who's it for?
So UpGame is essentially just a golf statistics app. You know, like there's so many out there nowadays, and I would say our big separator is from the data entry side, because everything is done using satellite images. Mm-hmm. So players don't necessarily have to remember every single yardage they have when they're going through a round, because that seems to always be kind of a common thing that comes up is, well, I've played my round, I'm not going to remember every single shot I've hit. Now you don't really need to do that. You can just pull up the image of the course and just place your shot on where you remember that you hit it too. Mm-hmm. Now that's one big thing of how we operate. And then over time, from when it was first created, I'd say about 6.5 years ago, we kind of realized there was an additional kind of need for information, mm-hmm. Basically measuring a player's intent. And that starts with the target. And so our pro version of the app actually has the option to place your target when you're entering your data. So you can really get target-based dispersions. You're also asked to quantify the end shot result beyond just the lie. And I can go into a little more detail, you know, as we talk about this of what that means. For sure. That's really a big thing that UpGame is about, is trying to quantify things that haven't necessarily been really regarded with some of the more, I guess, traditional statistics in the past.
Yeah, so like we talk about statistics, and maybe if we had a club golfer on here and we asked them about that, they would probably refer to, you know, how many greens did I hit, and, you know, and how many putts did I have, and very generic, but could be helpful in the past just to give you a little bit of an outlay guidance system. But you're kind of saying, I think I'm getting from you is, you know, a little bit of the more detail we put in, the more we're going to get back out. And what we're really looking for is, you know, that finite detail of where we can improve your game. So where's probably good and where can we improve? And so the more information we have, those players putting into the statistics apps, the more we're getting back to help them really improve their game. You mentioned there, sorry, one of the biggest challenges for players and indeed coaches is getting players to take the time to put those stats in, right? It's like we put players on these programs, we have these apps, and we go, okay, go do this. And it's challenging, right? Especially for club golfers. They have a lot of things going on. As you said, remembering the numbers is one thing, but also just after the round, taking the time to do that. From inputting data, you know, what's the process on UpGame? So you mentioned it a little bit there. Can I do that on the golf course? Do I have to do it after the round? And you mentioned about the yardages there. Kind of, is the generic yardage enough, or do we need to be very exact?
So as far as really how the data entry works, you have the option. You can do it both on the golf course or after. Originally, this was really designed to be done post round,
Okay.
and at the very start, the real reasoning behind that is entering your round was also meant to be a moment of reflection on your day, being
Nice.
able to kind of go through each shot on the map of the golf course and think, oh, did I really hit it there, or what
Hmm.
was that really the target I chose, and kind of be able to have that process be done while you're entering your stats. Now, since you have the app pulled up on your phone, you can 100% do it as you're playing.
Hmm.
Especially on the basic version of the app, you're really just placing your shots. You don't have any additional information to plug in.
Yeah.
So you can really just do it, have your phone out, place your shot, move on, it takes you a couple seconds. You can even do it between holes if you don't want to have your phone out every single time. You know,
Yeah.
from the green to the next tee, pulled up, you have it done very, very quickly, very intuitively.
Excellent. Yeah. So one of those kind of maybe issues is some golf courses don't allow phones on the golf course, so you might be able to do
Right.
that. And what I've done kind of is created this little kind of cheat sheet for the players. It's kind of the same size as a scorecard, and you have just columns, and basically you just write down fairway or rough, and then just the number.
Yep.
And then when you go do it later on, you can actually come back and just have a rough idea, no pun intended, on where that ball finished, and again put that data in. And you mentioned also the targeting. So on one version, and this is a really great thing about UpGame is you have different subscriptions on the website. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, but one of them is the pro version, and then you mentioned the basic version. Um, how when you were setting up the app, did you make sure, hey, we want a great app that's going to be very insightful, but we don't want to make it too complex that the average or the club golfer gets scared and goes, oh, that's way too much information. Now, as I said, you do have the different levels of subscriptions. Is there any other ways that you manage that, or is it just through the subscription?
I mean, the best way really is based on which version of the app you're going to use.
Hmm.
Because definitely the pro version has very advanced information. It provides phenomenal insights, but we also recognize, like you said, if you're a club golfer, you've got other things going on than just taking care of your golf game. And so having to enter what club selection you had, what was your target on every single shot you hit for 18 holes, we understand that's probably not something you're going to want to do. Or
Hmm.
half the time, you might want to, but you've got other priorities.
Exactly, exactly.
And so the basic version kind of helps with that. And the big thing is, I think, is a responsibility for everyone in the statistics space nowadays is educating people on getting them to understand statistics isn't this big bad monster that is going to overwhelm you. Sort of the way launch monitors were 10, 12 years ago.
Yeah.
Everyone knew it was something interesting and provided value, but people were always a little hesitant to dive in because they thought, okay, well, there's all these numbers on the screen when I hit a shot. What do they mean? How do I take out something that's going to make me improve? Stats is kind of in this space now, right, as of today. And so it's also on us to obviously try and simplify things as much as we can in the time spent entering your rounds, but also afterwards,
Hmm.
getting to understand, okay, these are the three main things that happen out there on the course today. And I don't need to bother with every single strokes gain metric that I hit or
Yeah.
every single putting conversion or whatever thing you're looking at. And that's a huge thing on making stats more accessible to everyone.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point because, as you said, people have this outside perspective of, oh, here comes some more information. We already got tons of information. But when you go to a launch monitor just reflects the information. So if we're out in some balls today, we put the launch monitor on, it'll just tell us the numbers. It's not going to tell us whether they were right or wrong to a certain extent. And many players can do many different things and still create efficient golf swings. I think the great thing about statistics apps is it'll actually point out the areas. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the coaching kind of dashboard and how to help students in a second, but it tells you where to look. So as you said, you're not having to look at every single piece of data in the whole thing. It's actually in the app going to show you, no, no, you don't have to worry about numbers 1 to 12. It's number 13, 14, and puts, let's say, between 5 and 10 feet, or,
Yeah.
7 iron, or 150 to 175 approach shots, whatever the case may be. It'll actually tell you where to look. And I think one of those big things that I definitely help my players is where do we point them then in practice? So, practice or learning, whatever way you want to phrase it, is such an invaluable part of progression and getting better. And for the most part, we're not great at it, right? So we kind of head out there, we do some technical work, and so the performance side of things can be heavily influenced by what we're discovering in the app, okay? Which I think is fantastic. So when you're looking at the coaching side of things, so a lot of great coaches are using the app. Jeff Smith, William, one of the really really good ones. I know Jeff, and he's doing a great job with the app. If a coach wants to use this in their programs, how does it fit into lessons and development plans?
Well, we really leave that to up to the coach to tell us what their needs are, because
Hmm.
there's a lot of different ways and different structures that are set out. You can
Hmm.
have some of the more elite coaches who are going to really rely on this very heavily and want to get all the very in-depth information, and a lot of those coaches will work on it individually. And
Hmm.
so coaches can do that and have a player and tell us, okay, I want to have 5 players to join the app because those are really my top players, and we'll really go in depth with them.
Hmm.
Now we also have instances with some of our larger academies where they have even juniors using the app.
Hmm.
And in this case, it's less about showing everything to the player, and it's more like the coaches doing the work from the back end,
Okay.
digesting all that information, and then taking it to the players with the essentials.
Yeah.
And so it just varies pretty extensively, from a like an academy, an instructor, someone who
Hmm.
works with individual clients, or then you can have the federation with their national teams, or a college program who are going to use all this very differently.
Yeah, absolutely. Whoever the customer is kind of depends what you want to create. And I mentioned it briefly before. What I love about the program, from my perspective at least, is I can create my players, add my players into my app. Once I connect with them, any round they upload, I automatically get it. I don't need
Yeah,
to go chasing them to upload rounds. And then I have my own professional dashboard in terms of a coach. So at any point, any day of the week, I can basically go in and check out reports on any single of those players and see where they need to improve. What I found, as I mentioned earlier on, is fantastic is I can go do that before a session tomorrow, what I have with this player, look at their last five, six, seven, eight, nine, 10 rounds, whatever I want, and I go, okay, so that's where we need to focus this session tomorrow. Actually, they're really struggling in this area because what they think or what they say might be different to what's actually happening on the golf course. So
yes.
perspective is important, right? So they had a poor round yesterday where they putted poorly. They'll come and they go, "Oh, my putting's really bad. I want to work my putting." And we'll have the statistics up there going, "Actually, you were fantastic in your putting the 4 rounds before. For whatever reason, yesterday you got all left to righters and you don't like left to righters. So whatever the case may be, actually, do you know what? Your approach play from 50 to 75 is far more of an issue right now rather than the putting. So let's go work on that."
Yeah, and I think having that, being able to be connected to your players is great when you're, even if when you don't see them for an extended
Mm,
period of time, you can still keep track of what's going on. You don't have to be there seeing every single shot. We have a shot tracker feature on the app for when you enter a round and you've submitted it, you can actually go view the shot by shot on the map of the golf course. And
mm,
so as a coach, you can actually go in, even if you weren't there with your player, and see, okay, well, they hit it there on the first, and then that was their approach. Go to like the sixth or seventh hole, see, okay, well, they made a double there. Well, what club were they hitting, or where did the shot end up? Was it a chip and a three putt, or did they hit one OB? There's You can get all the information about that context and not always have to rely on what the player thinks happened, because
mm.
players tend to be extremely subjective about their games. You know that just as much as I do.
Yeah.
Like you were saying, they'll come up like putted terrible. Well, you might have missed a couple short putts, but maybe you putted great from long range, and your numbers are actually saying you putted fine.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
helps make things a little more objective on when you're evaluating what's going on.
Yeah, one of the biggest challenges from a coaching in golf perspective when we talk to other coaches from other sports is going out and watching your player play, right? So if you're a tennis coach, okay, well, I can get time to go out. If you're kind of an athletics coach, okay, well, I can go to the meets. If you're a golf coach and you're working with six, seven, eight, nine, 10 individuals, you don't have separate 5-hour sets to go out and watch the whole round of golf. It's tough, right? So I find myself kind of the odd time when my players will post a score and I'll look at the scorecard and I'll go, oh man, you finished double, double. What did you do? And instead of asking them and kind of them reliving the events, I can actually go into the shot tracker and go, okay, yeah, he pulled his drive, penalty shot. Okay, now I know what happened. All right, cool. He played, okay, his approach shot he laid up, that was smart. Okay, okay. And then you can go talk to them with that context in mind, which I think is a very, very important part and aspect of it. What's one of the surprising stats or trends that golfers usually overlook when they see it in UpGame? What's one of those ones that you've got feedback of players going, oh, man, I never even really thought about that before.
Uh, I would say a two-part response here. The first one is they don't necessarily think about evaluating frequency. What I mean by
Okay.
that is they don't necessarily pay attention to how frequently they're hitting a certain type of shot. They're just going to look at the strokes gained metrics, or maybe the fairways hit, greens, putts, all of that. But they're not necessarily going to take a look, for example, at their approach shots and see the yardage breakdown that you get to see on UpGame separates it by 25-yard increments, where
Mm,
it will show you your strokes gained. You also see how many shots you're hitting from each area.
mhm.
So you might be doing very poorly from 50 to 75 yards and doing less, it's less shocking from 125 to 150, but you're going to have way more shots from 125 to 150.
Yeah.
And that becomes the priority to address. Even if just from a numbers perspective, the 50 to 75 will look much worse.
Hmm.
And I would say that's really a big one that players tend to, or even coaches tend to look over.
Yeah.
And the second part of this answer is going to be more from game management, and just I don't think players understand how much they have to gain by being a little smarter with their game planning. And even excellent golfers, even top Division 1 golfers,
Yeah.
are going to be still losing shots. There's a lot of raw talent out there.
Hmm.
Usually, the ones who end up making it to the big leagues are the ones who are understanding how to harness their strengths, how to
Yeah.
limit their weaknesses. And that comes from just effective game planning, studying the golf course, with UpGame's Pro version, since you're viewing your dispersions in relation to the target, you have the same reference on every single shot. And so with that, you can group them all together and then go use the plan round feature, where you can literally overlay your past shot dispersions on any golf course in the world. Even
Yeah.
if you've never set foot there, you can go see, okay, how does my driver look on this hole? And
Yeah.
I'll move my target, which will shift my dispersion on the golf course. And so they can get a very customized game plan on this tee. I can be pretty aggressive. On this one, I maybe
Mhm.
need to lay back. Even on approach shots, a lot of our elite amateurs, our touring pros who use the app, will go look at, for example, par threes and see, okay, the pin's going to be in this corner on day one. Day two is going to be different. Well, day one, I might be able to be aggressive based on my dispersion pattern from that yardage. But
Hmm.
day two, I need to play safe.
Yeah.
And it seems like such a fine detail to be paying attention to, which on one shot it is, but you stack it over 18 holes, and that can be a shot and a half, and you're not even hitting better shots.
Yeah.
That's one thing I try and tell all of our coaches, all of our players. You don't necessarily need to hit the ball better to get better. There's
Yeah.
tons of other ways to make those improvements, and it's a much lower hanging fruit to have an optimal game plan
Mm.
than trying to gain a shot per round with just raw improvement of having better proximity, being more accurate off the tee, making more putts from 5 to 10 feet. That's a
Yeah.
lot of work. That's a lot of time spent. Now, being able to optimize what you've already got is much more attainable.
Yeah, and it's nearly like a momentum feed, right? So when you start understanding that there is that dispersion in effect for every single player in the world, no matter who they are, how good they are, you actually start to improve your ball striking because you come a little bit more confident in what's going to
Yeah.
happen when you get that. So there's nearly that knock-on effect in the technical aspect. And I excuse me, I think what you mentioned there is very important about seeing the frequency. Especially if you're a golfer that plays a lot at your home club, this can be invaluable because you start seeing what clubs you use. It's nearly like when we're golf coaches on the range and you're like, do you practice with your forehand at all? No, not really. Well, when looking at the data, you hit your forehand 10 times in a round. So
Yep.
like let's start practicing with that. So little things like that can be really important. And then I imagine then for tournament play it can be fantastic because you can nearly go back a year and see, okay, what did I kind of where did I struggle at this tournament last year, or what do I need to be more efficient at? Where did I end up in a lot of the approach play, which is fantastic. You mentioned there a little bit about that shot dispersion, and when I was doing a little webinar with Jeff at one stage, he used a great example, and that was the 17th at Sawgrass. Everybody knows
Yeah.
that island green. And I think what you're getting at, and we obviously want to describe this as well as we can over a podcast, is say, for example, we're playing that 17th, that island green. The pin is on the right hand side, that tucked right position, normally reserved for the Sunday. And if we take our normal dispersion, let's say we're hitting 9-iron, let's just say 9-iron for example, and our normal dispersion, and what we do is then we take that dispersion circle. If we hit 25 9-irons and we aim them straight at the target, how many would finish right and how many would finish left, roughly speaking. And we can then apply that because we put that information in UpGame, and we can apply that over that target and see, you know what, majority of the time I actually miss it 10 to 15 yards right of where I normally aim. So for me on that 17th at Sawgrass, if I wanted to make birdie, I got to aim maybe about 10 yards left and allow that kind of fade pattern to perhaps happen.
Yeah.
Something along those lines.
That's spot on. I mean, that's a perfect example. I mean, it's probably the most telling one because
Yeah.
the penalty is so immediate on that hole.
Yeah.
That Sunday pin, yeah, if you're going to aim right at it, the odds, even for a tour player, are pretty high that you're
Yeah.
going to have some misses that end up in the water.
For sure.
And
And I think one of those other examples and why this is so good and so important is we're going to talk a little bit about the strategic partnership with TrackMan in a second. But I think what's invaluable about this part of the app is a lot of that information, that dispersion information that's creating that data for you is coming from tournament play.
yes,
And I think that makes a huge difference in terms of me hitting 57 irons out in the range. And that can be very helpful. But having information that is actually coming from tournaments, I think is far more valuable, right? So then you get really, really accurate, relevant, okay, under the gun, a little bit of pressure. Where do I normally miss? Okay, well, that's, having that predictability, that awareness of misses is probably, as you said, it's the low hanging fruit. Nobody hits it dead straight as we both know.
right. No, that's exactly it. And I think it just, those tendencies are going to change from one player to the next. You go to 17 at Sawgrass, you might have two players of the exact same level. One will have a tendency to miss left very frequently.
Yeah.
Well, that one can probably go for it pretty aggressively. Now, the one who tends to miss right probably needs to play it a little safer and understand that if they can group those misses in the right way, it'll play to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we mentioned a little bit about that strategic partnership with TrackMan. That was very exciting when we kind of saw that happening. I think it was in 2023, I believe, in around then.
Yeah, November.
Yeah, so with that came some fantastic kind of interaction and data sharing between the two companies. And one of the fantastic ones that came across kind of from my perspective was in Canada here, we do a lot of indoor training during the winter, can't be outside, and we use TrackMan at some of the facilities. And what we start getting then is this nice interaction between UpGame and TrackMan in terms of data sharing. So in terms of the dispersion that we mentioned. So that's one of the aspects. What are the other great things that have come from that partnership in terms of using UpGame, the app?
Well, there's been really two major integrations between UpGame and TrackMan as of now, and we're working on a lot of stuff, which I'm sure will be coming to light in the coming months, and I'm really excited for it. But right now, the first one is for your indoor rounds that you're playing on a simulator on TrackMan. So say it's in the wintertime, you can't really play outdoors. You can connect your TrackMan account on the UpGame app. And as soon as you play a round, it'll automatically provide all your statistics for that round. Like your strokes gained, fairways, greens, all of that. And what's really fantastic about it is there's no data entry needed. You don't have to enter the round.
Oh, it just automatically shares.
Just automatically does it.
Yeah, fantastic.
Now, the numbers are probably not going to be as in depth as you would find them when you're entering around on the golf course and you're putting all these additional details.
Hmm.
But it's a great way to bridge the gap of having no information to still having some kind of way to follow how things are going from
Yeah.
one round to the next. See, okay, what are my strokes gain numbers, all of that. And then the next piece of it is beyond just your simulator rounds. You're probably going to spend some time on TrackMan just hitting shots, whether it's in lessons, whether it's when you're practicing, and that's using shot analysis.
Yes.
Now, every shot that you hit on shot analysis that is logged to your account will carry over into UpGame, and you can use that to plan out your rounds. So by overlaying it on the map of the golf course. So
Okay.
as
Awesome.
you've always been able to do with UpGame and your on-course rounds, you can now do that with your TrackMan data. So as an example, theoretically, say you're playing a tournament next week, I can go use a TrackMan today and go hit, 50 drives, 53 woods, even spread it out over the week. And then I can go to UpGame, go to plan around, set a date range to the size of the sample I want to take, and go to that time frame. And then boom, I get the shots and I get to see, okay, as of today with my current form, here's how it's going to look on the golf course. So even if you're coming out of the winter, you're still coming out prepared and seeing how your game is going to stack up on any golf course.
That's amazing. So in theory, if I'm playing, let's say I have my club championship on Saturday, Sunday, and we're always as coaches, nearly trying to get players into that, except it's kind of theory, right? So I think, when I heard Sean talk a lot about what Tiger did and what he was great at, it was nearly that idea that on the round or the morning of a tournament, if he didn't feel he quite had it, he accepted it. Okay, I'm just going to play with what I have. And this is taking that to the next level. This is, okay, I've got the club championship Saturday, Sunday. I'm hitting balls on Friday. Don't really quite feel the swing, but what am I doing? What's the dispersion? What's the predictability here? As you said, you can put the TrackMan on, hit 50 shots on it, connect it up, and then that evening you could go through the round tomorrow and go, okay, so if that's the same flight I have tomorrow, that little squirrely fade that I don't love, but it is what it is, I can actually go through the course and actually plan out where I might have to aim to allow for all those things.
Yeah, no,
That's
that's a
fantastic. Yeah.
perfect example of it.
Yeah.
And where I think it becomes very powerful is this is obviously going to be fully personalized for each player.
Mhm.
A lot of game management nowadays is being centered around, how the tour players are playing, how their shots are going to stack up on a golf course, how you need to aim, which are all phenomenal principles. I mean,
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with them. And it's just we're applying this in a more personalized way for each individual player. So you
Yeah.
can be a club player and go have your game plan, but it's created for you,
Yeah.
not using a standard of play that you might not be at for now.
Yeah, and I think that's the key for any technology that you're using, whatever it might be. It has to be applicable to you. Like indeed, YouTube gets a bad name sometimes for the golf information, but if you have context, like what you need out of it, it can be really good, like a library, right? But if you're kind of just looking
Yeah.
for that generic fix, it's a bit of a minefield. Just recently, you added some cool updates on the app.
Yeah.
The mental process tracking, I was really interested in. I kind of saw that there. Um, you mentioned, okay, some new stuff coming with TrackMan, but kind of explain the latest updates and then what's the big things coming down the line that we should be looking out for?
So for the mental process first, that's something that we've been working on internally, playing around with for quite a few months now, and essentially just gives players the option when they're entering their rounds
Hmm.
to tag for that shot their mental state, and we've left it pretty open ended
Hmm.
of excellent, good, average, poor, very poor. That seems pretty broad, but that's on purpose
Hmm.
because each player is going to evaluate their mental state in a different way. One player, that might be their commitment level.
Yeah.
Another might be how positive their mindset was. Another might be how clearly did I visualize the golf shot.
Yeah.
And so we've kind of left it a little more open ended. But as long as players are entering that with consistency, then they can go look at their numbers and they
Hmm.
can filter out their data based on that. So if they want to see what does my dispersion pattern look like when I'm in an excellent mindset, I set that. And then they can stack a comparison right below it directly on the app and
Yeah.
switch it out for when they're in a very poor mindset and see, okay, here's the size of the missed pattern. Here's the strokes gain numbers. Here's the driving distance, the average proximity, however you want to gauge that, but you're able to really sort through it. And I think this can be a really huge step forward with getting players to understand in a more measurable way the importance of being in the right mindset or being mentally sharp. And that's really exciting in the world of stats, which has always been something very, very cut and dry, very tangible of this is the shot, you hit it, and that's that. Now you're bringing something that's been more so viewed as the unmeasurable aspect of golf. And we're really trying to bridge that gap.
Yeah. Yeah. I've done a lot of work with kind of breathing training before with different companies. And the challenge being a golf coach trying to make a living also is if a guy came to a lesson or a lady came to a lesson tomorrow and says, hey, I'm struggling with my slice. And I'm like, okay, so let's work on your functional breathing. Chances are I'm probably not going to see that student ever again. So the reason why it's so hard to really, as you said, tangibly, really mark the effect of breathing better, or as you said, thinking better. So that's fantastic. You can actually go in and reference, hey, when I was feeling good, look, that dispersion's a little narrower. When I maybe a little feeling kind of down or not as positive or not as confident. And then you can track, okay, well, was I eating well that day? And you can start looking at all those different things that might influence that. I think it's really, really going into nice depth and detail because at the top level, it's that little finite detail, those little numbers that kind of really, really make the differences. And in terms of things coming up that maybe you could talk about or that you can't talk about, what's happening in the next 3-4 months or coming into 2026 with UpGame?
Well, a big focus for us is always try and make the information more accessible, easier to understand. We've taken a big step forward here with our AI insights that we just came out with a few weeks ago here. And essentially what that does is you can use AI, artificial intelligence, to generate a summary of a round that you've just played. And so pretty much it just puts into words what happened. You don't need to go look at every single number and know what every single number means to get something out of what you just did out there. Here you just generate the summary, breaks it down into a couple paragraphs. It'll tell you your scoring breakdown, the overall strokes gained, but then also it'll show you your top performing area, whether it's tee, approach, short game, or putting, and it will provide a bit of context as to why. For example, you did really well on your approach shots. Well, you hit 72% of greens today, and your average proximity from the fairway was 27 feet. And that's why you did so well. And then putting might have been a struggle because you lost 2 strokes on the greens, but a shot and a half of that was your 25 to 40 foot range. And so then all of a sudden it's not just, oh, I putted poorly. It's more, I just got to work on my lag putting.
Yeah.
Instead of just thinking, oh, I'm terrible at putting and that's that. That's not a constructive thing.
Yeah, absolutely not.
And for us, it's really to continue making that evolve and having that applied to maybe a larger data set of information, whether it's a cumulative analysis or studying dispersion patterns. It's pretty endless when you go down that route, but the main direction is making it easier to understand. We need the point of entry to be as easy to get by as possible.
Yeah.
Kind of the same way as it is with the data entry side. If it's hard to do, you can have all the fanciest stats in the world, the most insightful information. Players are not going to get to it because it's too hard to do. And that's a similar vein we're going down with as far as developing the product.
Okay. In terms of the strokes gained that you use in the app, is it defaulting to a PGA Tour standard? Is there an option to make it more like a 15 to 20 handicap, or how's that going to look in the future? Are there any plans to do that?
So right now you've got the option between PGA or LPGA Tour benchmarks. As far as overall benchmark, that's all we have.
Yeah. Now
we have a few other ones you can compare yourself to, such as Division I in college, both the men's and women's, the top 50 in WAGR, along with some junior golf benchmarks in Europe.
Okay.
The top 10 players and the average for the players who are competing in the more international tournaments across the country, just help them understand the difference there is. Like one that sounds maybe a little crazy at time, but the average Division I golfer is actually losing 2 strokes per round to a PGA Tour golfer.
Interesting.
and you think D1 is that you're just right below tour numbers. And I mean, when you think about it, 2 shots really isn't too much, but
Yeah,
over a
but added over 4 rounds.
that's 8 shots.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
8 shots from field average, not
Yeah.
even from the winner. But we're definitely trying to open up the benchmarking. The
Hmm.
big challenge is always, can you get enough data to make it reliable?
Yes.
And you can't have too much variance. And that's why
Yeah.
we haven't really gone just yet into strokes gained for handicaps,
Hmm.
because you can have a lot of different handicaps
Yeah.
between, you know, some might be, sandbagging a little bit, or
Yeah.
you can have some
No.
that have their never. No, but you
Never.
might have some that have built their handicap at their home course because that's
Yeah.
the only place they have time to go play. And
Hmm.
then you can have someone else with the exact same handicap who plays on the road all the time or who plays a lot more
Hmm.
events. And that standard of golf is going to be very different if you put them on the same golf course. And that's why it's still something we're not just yet going into,
Yeah.
because we haven't found a solution where it's genuinely reliable.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's my one issue with companies like Arcos who advertise all these statistics coming from these club golfers is exactly what you just said. So different golf courses, different parts of the world, different intentions, different practice levels, different levels of difficulty. So many variables within those numbers. It's you can't be reliable. And when we're looking at data, we're looking for it to be reliable. We got to trust it. Um,
yeah,
if we have a club golfer signs up tomorrow, how many rounds, realistically speaking, do we need to put in before we start getting some nice kind of flow overall data?
I would say 10 to 15 is a
Okay.
good place to start.
Hmm.
Anything less than that, it might be like kind of like a trend more of in the moment.
Okay.
Obviously, the more you get, the better it's going to be.
Yeah.
But 10 to 15, I would say, is a good starting place where you can start looking at the overall data and see, okay, well, this is something that I need to address and I can discuss with my coach,
Yeah.
or that I can work on by myself, however it is. Now with UpGame, as far as practicing, it's become even better to stay connected with your coach because there's a practice section
Yeah.
where you can create drills and assign them to players. So once you've kind of built that baseline of information, you can start building out a practice plan and going to take a look and see, okay, well, I'm really having a hard time from 125 to 150. Let's see what we can work on. Is it going to be maybe a more performance based exercise, or is it going to be more technical work? You really have the option to play around with that and see what's the best fit.
Yeah, and you can create your own drills as a coach and just assign them
Yeah.
to different players at different times too, which can be very, very helpful. Um, I think when you're looking at this, as we mentioned at the very start, the challenge is going to be people taking the time. But from my perspective and the way I try to explain it is, all right, well, you could spend an hour on the driving range working on your golf swing, like really putting effort in. It's really hot these last couple of weeks in Canada here, so it's going to take a lot of energy. Or versus the hour, you could take 10 minutes and put in the data from the previous round. Now,
Yeah.
what we're saying is if you start doing the 10 minutes, you might have really good improvement. You're definitely going to have more awareness of what you're doing on the golf course. So let's just say that factually, that can't be argued. If you start tomorrow and you start going, okay, let's play 15 rounds, get on the UpGame app, spend 10 minutes after each round putting in the data, which is about the number it takes if you're kind of efficient with it once you get used to it. That's going to benefit you massively in terms of knowing and learning your game and where you need to focus to get better. And if you know where you need to focus to get better, the hour of practice, you can probably get the same amount done in about 10 minutes or 15 minutes because you're being more efficient. So it's kind of start looking at it in these ways, you start understanding, okay, well, hey, my initial reaction is, oh, another thing to do. I got to put in the data. I'm like, well, no, actually, you can start actually being way more efficient with your time and actually probably spending less time, especially for those golfers maybe that don't practice. Hey, I don't have time to practice. I'm like, okay, well, if you have 10 minutes to put in the round, this might help you just get better without practicing. So there's so much benefit to come from this. I think it's just really players need to kind of jump in and just try it out and get a look at it. And one of the things that attracted me to this app versus a few other ones was the subscriptions and the fact that for us in Canada here, and I know you mentioned TrackMan and the indoors is fantastic, but you do have a 6 month subscription. So you have
Yeah.
the basic and the pro subscriptions, and you do have a 6 months available. So, any players there, like, oh, yeah, I only play from like, March or April, really through to September, October. Like, well, this is perfect for you. 6 month subscription. get on it, and it's not that expensive. We won't list the prices because there's so many different people from different countries who just would confuse people. So I think it's fantastic. Now, before we tell kind of golfers where they can go sign up, give me that last pitch. Why UpGame for club golfers? Why have they got to do it in general, and why it versus the other apps for yourself?
Well, first, why UpGame? I would say maybe why stats in the first place, and that just goes to what you were just saying. It's you're going to be more efficient with your time.
Yeah.
And you're going to be more efficient also with what you're getting out of lessons. Because let's be honest, for a lot of golfers, whether they're recreational or playing at a high level, there's some kind of investment being made, whether it's time, whether it's money. You can really optimize that. You can get more out of what you're putting into it, of just optimizing what you're doing, understanding how you operate out on the golf course, having better practice plans, clearer communication with your coaches. That really all blends together and is why you want to do this. Now, why UpGame? You're going to have very simple and very intuitive data entry. And also you're going to be able to view some metrics that you're not going to find anywhere else, with your target-based dispersions, with the end shot result that you can tag beyond just a lie to help with the context of the variables you face on the golf course. And then obviously the partnership with TrackMan is something you're not going to find anywhere else, of being able to take what you're doing on TrackMan off the golf course and take it out there and have it benefit you in real time when you actually need it to, and you're sitting up for a shot.
Yeah, no, absolutely fantastic points in terms of what's happening. And as you said, like personally, I think it's the best app out there for coaches. It's really helped me with my students. And we haven't really gotten into the fine detail of how good this thing can be, and because we want to kind of make this is for club golfers and for coaches, so we don't want to go crazy into the detail. But if you are a golf coach, there's an awful lot more to this. The team at UpGame, you and yourself, all the other guys have been absolutely fantastic to me, very helpful, always good with support and stuff. So if you're a coach and you want that, and that's important to you, which it is, the team at UpGame are fantastic, very, very helpful, always keen to lend a hand and explain things and data and keep you updated. So, and the thing I love about the app too, we mentioned earlier on, are the updates. So I always like companies that I work with to continuously be, hey, how can we get better? Because I'm kind of looking in the same way, right? So how can we improve? How can we develop this? So anybody that's doing that is always going to be a plus in my book. Ewen, thank you so much for joining us. Really, really appreciate that. So if people want to sign up, what's the website?
So the website is going to be www.upgame.app, not .com. It's just a bit of a quirk there.
Yeah.
That's where you can find a lot of the information, get some info on how the subscriptions work. We also have a YouTube channel where we're putting out a lot of videos with information about how the platform works, covering some information about just data, how it's used by the pros. We try and do a lot of case studies to put into a more real context. So definitely go take a look there. And you can also find us on Instagram and LinkedIn, where we're trying to be very active, put out a lot of information, not just about UpGame, but about stats in general, just because we feel the more people know, the better it's going to be for everybody.
Yeah, the Instagram, as you mentioned there, some of the stats are cool. You go PGA Tour versus different tours. You go into why Scotty Scheffler is beyond doubt the best player in the world at the moment. All those great things, which I find fascinating. I'm sure many other club golfers do. So, Ewan, thank you again for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today. As I said, you guys, from my perspective, are doing a fantastic job, and I highly encourage anybody who's not come across UpGame to go check it out, explore it. It's not crazy expensive. It's very affordable. So go on that 6 month and then try it out, and you won't be sorry. You'll see the benefits straight away. So thanks, mate. I really, really appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, Steve, thanks so much for the time. Thank you for all the kind words. And hope to see you soon.
Cool, man.
All right, thanks.
All right, so that wraps up another episode. Massive thanks to Ewan from UpGame for coming on the show. The more I teach, really, the more I'm appreciative of solving the low-hanging fruit for players, especially those players that don't have an awful lot of spare time to really practice. And the UpGame app does exactly that. It directs you in the right place on what you need to practice to improve. So for club golfers, the payback is well worth the time. And for the golf coaches, if you really look for ways to improve your players' performance and the efficiency of the time you're spending with them on the range, then this really is a must. Again, it creates a nice plan of improvement. So For more information or to sign up to UpGame, go to the website www.upgame.app. And for some great insights on how the best in the world are performing, check out the UpGame social platforms. As always, big thank you to the listeners out there, as without you listening and downloading these podcasts, there wouldn't be a show. I really appreciate the support and the feedback. And just a reminder, if you do enjoy it, please make sure to rate the show on either Apple Podcasts or Spotify. As always, if you want to work with myself in person or online, or indeed have any questions on golf or even the podcast, you can contact me on Instagram at SteveMooreGolf or through the website SteveMooreGolf.com. Finally, for your own game, don't forget, work hard, work diligently, but most importantly, work smart, and we'll talk to you again soon.